The daughter raised for silence, until she discovered it was the weapon that would bring down the family. On the day of the will reading, while the family celebrated the newly chosen chief, Helena Armand sat at the back of the room, as quiet as her entire life had taught her to be. The lawyer announced her brother's name. The room applauded, and when Helena finally raised her hand to ask a single question, her stepmother placed a finger to her lips and whispered, "Silence. This isn't about you." Helena lowered her gaze, but she saw for the first time something no one wanted her to see, a forged signature, her father's, right above the words, "Helena Armand is excluded from all inheritance rights." In that instant, she realized her silence had never been a flaw. It was the weapon they used against her, and it would be the same weapon she would use to destroy them all. Since childhood, Helena Armand was molded to disappear. The family said that well-mannered girls don't raise their voices, that elegant women don't challenge decisions, that daughters from good families don't ask questions. So she grew up believing that staying silent was a sign of maturity, when, in reality, it was the foundation of a carefully constructed plan to erase her. While her older brother was celebrated as the heir, protected, displayed as a symbol of the Armand family legacy, Helena was reduced to a shadow. Any doubt she expressed was interrupted. Any attempt to get involved in company matters was cut off with ready-made phrases. "It's none of your business. Your father didn't put you in this. You don't need to know." But after her father's sudden death, small details began to crumble. Strange signatures, sealed boxes that shouldn't exist, and memories that didn't match the family's official version. Until Helena discovered something no one ever imagined she was capable of discovering. The silence imposed throughout her entire life contained the key to bringing them all down, and revealing why the true heir had always been her. The Armand estate had always been a monument to excess. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings like frozen waterfalls, their light refracting across marble floors, polished to an almost offensive shine. Oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls of the main drawing room, their eyes seeming to judge every person who dared enter. This was wealth that didn't whisper. It screamed. On the morning of the will reading, the drawing room was filled with the kind of people who wore their inheritance like armor. Distant cousins who hadn't spoken to Helena's father in years suddenly appeared in tailored suits and designer dresses, their concern for the deceased as fabricated as their sympathetic expressions. The air smelled of expensive perfume, old money, and desperation. Helena sat in the back corner, her presence so diminished she might as well have been part of the furniture. She wore a simple black dress, not designer, not memorable, not noticed. Her hands were folded in her lap, her posture perfect, her face carefully neutral. She had learned long ago that invisibility was safer than visibility. At the front of the room, her stepmother Vivienne presided over the gathering like a queen at court. Vivienne Armand was a woman who had perfected the art of looking sympathetic while being utterly calculating. Her black Chanel suit was impeccable, her platinum hair swept into an elegant chignon, her expression one of practiced grief. She dabbed at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, accepting condolences with the grace of someone who had already secured her victory. Beside Vivienne stood Marcus, Helena's older brother. At 32, Marcus Armand was everything the family had groomed him to be: confident, charismatic, and completely hollow. He wore his father's success like a borrowed coat, too large for his actual accomplishments. His hand rested possessively on the back of Vivienne's chair, already assuming the role of patriarch before the ink on the will had dried. The family lawyer, Gerald Hutchinson, was a man whose loyalty could be purchased by the highest bidder. He had served the Armand family for 20 years, and his allegiance had shifted seamlessly from Helena's father to Vivienne the moment death certificates were signed. He cleared his throat, adjusting his reading glasses with the practiced solemnity of someone about to deliver news everyone already knew. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering today under such difficult circumstances," Hutchinson began, his voice carrying the rehearsed sympathy of a man who had done this 100 times before. "We are here for the reading of the last will and testament of Richard Armand, beloved husband, father, and pillar of this community." Helena felt her chest tighten. Beloved father. The words rang hollow. Her father had been many things, brilliant, driven, complex, but the distance between them had always felt intentional, as if Vivienne had constructed an invisible wall brick by brick over the years. "As you all know," Hutchinson continued, "Richard built the Armand Corporation from the ground up. His vision, his sacrifice, his legacy will continue through his chosen successor. The room leaned forward collectively, though everyone already knew the answer. Richard Armand leaves the entirety of Armand Corporation, including all holdings, assets, and executive authority, to his son, Marcus Anthony Armand. Applause erupted. Not the polite, measured clapping of a funeral gathering, but enthusiastic, almost celebratory applause. Marcus stood, accepting handshakes and embraces, his smile wide and triumphant. Vivienne beamed with maternal pride, her hand clutching a strand of pearls that probably cost more than most people's homes. Helena remained seated, her hands still folded, her expression unchanged. She had expected this. She had been prepared for this her entire life, but preparation didn't make it hurt less. The family estate, including the residence and all properties, will remain under the stewardship of Vivienne Armand, Hutchinson announced. More applause, more smiles. Helena waited for her name. Surely there would be something. A trust fund, a small inheritance, some acknowledgement that she existed. As for Helena Margaret Armand, Hutchinson paused, glancing at Vivienne before continuing. She will receive a modest annual stipend to be administered at the discretion of the estate executor. A stipend, not an inheritance, not property, not even a meaningful sum. A stipend, doled out like allowance to a child, controlled by the very people who had spent her entire life making her feel like she didn't belong. Helena felt her hand twitch, the instinct to raise it, to speak, to ask why burning in her throat. But before she could move, Vivienne was there, materializing beside her like smoke, her perfectly manicured hand resting on Helena's shoulder with just enough pressure to pin her in place. Vivienne leaned down, her lips close to Helena's ear, her voice a whisper wrapped in silk and steel. Silence. This isn't about you. The words were delivered with a smile, her public face never faltering. To anyone watching, it looked like a gesture of comfort. Only Helena felt the threat beneath it. Helena lowered her gaze, her jaw clenched so tightly it ached, and that's when she saw it. The document Hutchinson held had been placed momentarily on the table beside her, close enough for Helena to see clearly. Most of it was standard legal language, dense paragraphs of whereas and hereby. But one section caught her eye, standing out like a wound. Helena Margaret Armand is hereby excluded from all inheritance rights, claims and succession privileges pertaining to Armand Corporation and associated assets. The language was clear, absolute, intentional, but it was the signature beneath it that made Helena's blood turn cold. She knew her father's signature. She had seen it 1,000 times, on birthday cards when she was young, on school permission slips, on the rare check he'd written her for college expenses. His signature was distinctive, a bold, sweeping R that dominated the page, followed by quick, almost impatient strokes for the rest of his name. The signature on this document was different. The R was too small, too careful. The spacing was wrong. The pressure of the pen inconsistent. Someone had tried to replicate Richard Armand's signature and had failed. Helena's breath caught. Her eyes darted across the page, searching for anything else out of place. The date, 3 days before her father's death. But she had seen him that day. He had been in the hospital, barely conscious, hooked to machines, his hand trembling when she'd held it. There was no way he had signed this document. As Hutchinson droned on about administrative details, and Vivienne accepted congratulations with gracious humility, Helena sat frozen, her mind racing. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't favoritism. This was fraud. Someone had forged her father's signature to cut her out of her own inheritance, and the only people with access to those documents, with motive to change them, with everything to gain from her erasure, were the same people currently celebrating in this room. Helena stood slowly, so quietly that no one noticed. She moved toward the door, her steps measured, her face still composed. She didn't run. She didn't make a scene. She simply left, slipping out of the drawing room like a ghost. But as she walked through the corridors of the estate that had never truly felt like home, Helena made herself a promise. She would find the truth. She would expose every lie, and nothing would ever be the same again. Helena's earliest memory was of being told to be quiet. She was 4 years old, standing in her father's study with a drawing clutched in her small hands. She had worked on it all morning, a crayon portrait of their family, with big, smiling faces and a bright yellow sun. She wanted to show him, wanted to see him smile the way he used to before Vivienne came into their lives. But when she pushed open the heavy oak door, Vivienne was already there, her hand on Richard's shoulder, her voice low and intimate. They were looking at documents spread across his desk, papers covered in numbers and signatures. "Daddy, look what I—" "Helena." Vivian's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Your father is working. Educated children don't interrupt." Richard looked up, his expression torn between affection and exhaustion. For a moment, Helena thought he might tell Vivian it was okay, that he wanted to see the drawing. Instead, he sighed. "She's right, sweetheart. Not now." Helena's small hand dropped, the drawing crumpling slightly at the edges. Vivian's smile was thin and cold. "Good girls know when to be silent," she said, guiding Helena out of the room with a hand that looked gentle, but gripped too tightly. "Remember that." That became the pattern of Helena's childhood, a series of interruptions, corrections, and careful erasures. When Marcus was born 2 years later, everything changed, or rather, everything that had been slowly shifting finally solidified into permanent structure. Marcus was celebrated from his first breath. His baby photos were professionally taken and displayed throughout the house in silver frames. His first words were documented and shared with visiting relatives. His childhood accomplishments, no matter how minor, were treated as evidence of inevitable greatness. Helena's achievements were met with polite acknowledgement and immediate dismissal. When Helena won the elementary school spelling bee, Vivian congratulated her at breakfast with a tight smile. "Very nice, dear. Now let's not brag about it. Humility is more important than trophies." When Marcus won a participation ribbon at a school sports day, Vivian threw a celebration dinner, inviting family friends and toasting his athletic promise. The message was clear, repeated so consistently that it became background noise. Marcus mattered. Helena didn't. By the time Helena was 12, she had learned to make herself small. She spoke only when spoken to. She didn't ask questions at dinner. She didn't volunteer information about her day. She moved through the Armand mansion like a well-trained ghost, present but not intrusive, visible but not notable. There was one exception, her father. In the rare moments when Vivienne was occupied elsewhere, Richard would sometimes seek Helena out. These moments felt stolen, precious, fragile. He would find her reading in the library or doing homework in her room, and he would sit beside her, not saying much, just being present. "You're smart, Helena," he told her once when she was 14. They were in his study. Vivian had gone to some charity luncheon, and he was showing her a project he was working on. "Smarter than you know. Smarter than they give you credit for." They never needed definition. "One day," he continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, "you're going to need to pay attention to things people don't want you to see. Can you do that for me?" Helena nodded, not fully understanding but storing the words away like precious stones. "The important things," Richard said, tapping the side of his head, "are never in the places people are looking. They're hidden, protected, and the people who find them are the ones who know how to be patient, who know how to wait, who know how to be silent." He smiled at her then, a sad, knowing smile that Helena wouldn't fully understand until years later. "Your silence isn't weakness, Helena. Never let anyone tell you it is." The door opened. Vivienne stood in the doorway, her expression perfectly neutral, but her eyes were ice. "Richard, darling, you have a conference call in 5 minutes. Helena, I'm sure you have homework." The moment shattered. Richard stood, the walls going back up, the distance reimposing itself. Helena gathered her books and left, but as she passed Vivienne in the doorway, she heard her stepmother's whisper, "Don't get ideas, girl. This family has plans, and you're not part of them." That night, Helena lay in bed replaying her father's words. "Your silence isn't weakness." At the time she had taken comfort in them. Now remembering them in the wake of discovering the forged will, they took on new meaning. Had her father known? Had he anticipated what Vivienne would do? Helena got out of bed and went to her closet, pulling down a box from the top shelf. Inside were the few personal items she had kept from childhood: photographs, old birthday cards, small mementos. At the bottom was a birthday card from her 13th birthday. She opened it carefully. Her father's handwriting filled the inside. "To my brilliant daughter, who sees more than she says and knows more than she shows, keep your eyes open and your mind sharp. One day you'll understand why these matter more than noise. Love always, Dad." Below his message was his signature, the real signature. Helena held it up to the lamplight, memorizing every curve, every stroke, every detail. Then she pulled out her phone and took a photograph of it. If they had forged his signature on the will, this was proof. This was evidence that the signature she'd seen at the reading was wrong. But more than that, rereading her father's words now, Helena realized something that made her hands shake. He had been preparing her. All those cryptic conversations, all those odd moments of connection, all those strange phrases about seeing what others missed. He had been training her to survive exactly this moment. Her father had known his family would try to erase her, and he had left her the tools to fight back. Helena carefully placed the card back in the box, her mind already racing through possibilities, connections, patterns. The game had been rigged her entire life, but Richard Armand had taught his daughter how to play it anyway. And now, finally, Helena was ready to move her first piece. The funeral had been a performance worthy of an Oscar. St. Mark's Cathedral was packed with people who had barely known Richard Armand, but desperately wanted to be seen mourning him. Politicians, business associates, society elites. They all filed past the casket with practiced expressions of sorrow, their grief as authentic as costume jewelry. Helena had been relegated to the third row, behind Vivian and Marcus, behind even some of Richard's business partners. When she tried to move closer during the service, Vivian had placed a firm hand on her arm. "The immediate family sits in front, dear. You understand." The message was clear. Helena wasn't immediate family. She was peripheral, decorative at best. The priest delivered a eulogy that spoke of Richard's business acumen, his charitable contributions, his dedication to building a legacy. He mentioned Vivian's devotion as a wife. He praised Marcus as the son carrying forward his father's vision. Helena's name was mentioned once, briefly, an afterthought. And of course, his daughter Helena. No details, no stories, no acknowledgement of relationship, just a name checked off a list. After the service, as people gathered for the reception at the Armand estate, Helena found herself standing alone near the catering tables, watching the social choreography unfold around her. Clusters of mourners formed and reformed, conversations flowing about business opportunities, market trends, political connections. Her father's death had become a networking event. She was reaching for a glass of water when she overheard two of her father's business associates talking nearby. They hadn't noticed her. People rarely did. "Such a tragedy," one said, a silver-haired man whose company had partnered with Armand Corporation on several projects. "Richard was brilliant. I can't believe he's gone. At least he got his affairs in order," the other replied, younger, ambitious, already calculating angles. "Clean succession, no drama. Marcus is green, but Vivian will guide him. Still, you'd think Helena would have gotten something more substantial. She is his daughter." Richard made his choice. He knew Marcus was ready to lead. Helena was never involved in the business, probably for the best. Helena's grip tightened on her water glass. Never involved. As if she'd had a choice. As if every attempt she'd made to understand her father's work hadn't been shut down before it began. She moved away from them, weaving through the crowd toward the main house. She needed air, space, somewhere away from the suffocating atmosphere of manufactured grief. That's when she passed the study. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap Helena could see Vivian and Gerald Hutchinson, the family lawyer, engaged in intense conversation. Their voices were low, urgent, not meant to be overheard. Helena stopped, pressing herself against the wall beside the door, her presence hidden by a large decorative plant. "Can't keep asking questions," Hutchinson was saying, his voice tight with stress. "If anyone looks closely at the timeline—" "No one will look," Vivian interrupted, her tone sharp with certainty. "Richard's signature has been authenticated. The will is filed. It's over, Gerald. But the hospital records... The hospital records show he was medicated but conscious, capable of making decisions. We have 3 witnesses who will testify he was lucid." "Vivian, I'm just saying..." "You're saying nothing." The steel in Vivian's voice could have cut glass. "You've been compensated generously for your discretion. If you're having second thoughts about our arrangement, I suggest you remember what's at stake." There was a pause. Then Hutchinson's voice, quieter now, defeated. "Of course. You're right. I'm just being paranoid." "Good. Now go manage the guests, and if Helena approaches you with any questions, refer her to me. She's emotional, confused. Grief makes people see conspiracies where there are none." Helena's heart was pounding so loudly she was certain they would hear it. She moved quickly away from the door, her mind racing. The hospital records. They had prepared a defense for the hospital records, which meant there was something in those records that could expose the forgery. She needed to see them. As the reception continued, Helena began to notice other things. Small inconsistencies that, taken individually, meant nothing. But, together, they formed a pattern. Marcus, who was supposedly inheriting a company he'd helped build, knew nothing about its actual operations. When business associates asked him specific questions about projects or investments, he deflected with vague corporate speak, his eyes constantly searching for Vivian to rescue him. Several people asked, "Where's Helena?" at the reception. Each time Vivian materialized with a sympathetic smile, touching their arm, redirecting the conversation. "She's taking it very hard. Needs some space, you understand." Helena was right there, visible, present, but Vivian's narrative was stronger than reality. Late in the afternoon, as the reception was winding down, Helena returned to the study. She needed to see what Vivian and Hutchinson had been discussing. The door was locked now, but Helena had grown up in this house. She knew where Vivian kept the spare keys. The study was exactly as her father had left it. His desk was still cluttered with papers, his reading glasses folded beside the computer, his favorite fountain pen uncapped, as if he'd just set it down. The room smelled like him: leather, coffee, old books. Helena moved quickly, systematically searching drawers and cabinets. Most were filled with standard documents, nothing unusual, but then she found a drawer that wouldn't open. It was locked, and none of the keys she'd brought worked. She was about to give up when she remembered something. Her father used to keep a small toolkit in the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet for assembling business presentation materials. Inside was a letter opener with a thin, flat edge. It took her 5 minutes of careful maneuvering, but the lock finally gave way. Inside the drawer were folders, recent folders labeled with dates from the last 6 months of her father's life. She pulled them out, spreading them across the desk, her hands shaking. Medical records, financial statements, legal documents, and a draft of a will. Not the will that had been read at the reading, a different will. This one was dated 4 months before her father's death, and in it, Helena was named as primary beneficiary of Armand Corporation, with Marcus receiving a substantial trust but no executive control. There was a note paper-clipped to the front, in her father's distinctive handwriting: "Revised succession plan. Helena has the vision and integrity this company needs. Marcus needs time to mature without the pressure of leadership. Vivian cannot be involved in corporate decisions. Conflict of interest too great. Discuss with Helena before filing." Helena's vision blurred with tears. Her father had wanted her to lead. He had seen her potential. He had planned to give her everything they'd told her she didn't deserve, but this will had never been filed. It had been hidden in a locked drawer, while a forged version had been submitted in its place. She was reaching for her phone to photograph the documents when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Multiple people moving quickly. Helena barely had time to shove the folders back into the drawer before the study door opened. Vivian stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 men Helena didn't recognize. Her expression was cold fury, barely contained beneath a veneer of civility. "Helena, what are you doing in here?" "I wanted to be close to Dad's things," Helena said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Is that not allowed?" Vivian's eyes swept the room, cataloguing everything, calculating risks. Her gaze lingered on the desk, on the drawer that Helena hadn't quite closed all the way. "This room is off limits while we inventory your father's assets. You need to leave. This was Dad's private study. He would want me here. Your father is dead." Vivian's voice was ice. "And this estate, including this room, is now under my control. You will leave or I will have security remove you." The 2 men stepped forward, not threatening yet, but ready to be if needed. Helena stood slowly, maintaining eye contact with Vivian, refusing to be intimidated. But as she walked past her stepmother, Vivian leaned in close. Her whisper meant for Helena alone. "Stop searching for things that will only hurt you. Your father made his choice. Accept it." Helena didn't respond. She simply walked out, her mind already working through what she'd discovered and what it meant. But as she descended the stairs, she glanced back and saw something that made her blood run cold. Vivian was standing at the study window, a lighter in her hand, feeding documents into a metal waste bin, burning evidence. Helena ran back upstairs, but by the time she reached the study, the door was locked and she could smell smoke. She pressed her face against the window, watching helplessly as Vivian destroyed page after page, the flames consuming her father's true will, his plans, his intentions. But Vivian had been hurried, panicked. Some papers fell to the side of the bin, only partially burned, and Helena could see through the window a corner of one document that had escaped the flames. It had her father's signature on it, his real signature. The proof Helena needed was going up in smoke, but not all of it. She just had to find a way to retrieve what remained. 3 days after the funeral, Helena found the box. She had been staying in a modest hotel downtown, unable to bear another night in the estate, with Vivian's watchful eyes and Marcus's guilty avoidance. The hotel was impersonal, forgettable, exactly what she needed. A place to think without the weight of family history crushing her from all sides. She spent her days searching for answers. She drove to the hospital where her father had died, trying to access his medical records, but was told only immediate family, meaning Vivian, could request them. She attempted to schedule a meeting with Hutchinson, but his secretary claimed he was unavailable indefinitely. She even considered hiring a private investigator, but didn't trust anyone connected to the Armand social circle not to report back to Vivian. Every avenue seemed deliberately blocked, every path forward carefully obstructed, until she remembered the storage unit. When Helena was 16, her father had taken her to a storage facility on the outskirts of town. It was an odd memory, one she hadn't thought about in years. They had driven there alone. Vivian had been visiting her sister, and her father had shown her a small unit filled with boxes and old furniture. "This is where I keep things that matter," he'd said, his tone unusually serious. "Not valuable in the way most people think of value, but important to me. If anything ever happens, Helena, this is yours. Remember that." He had given her a key that day. She'd kept it on her keychain for years, a small brass key she'd never used, almost forgotten, until now. The storage facility was exactly where she remembered it. A squat concrete building surrounded by chain-link fence, security cameras mounted at regular intervals. Helena signed in under her name, and the board attendant barely glanced at her before waving her through. Unit 247 was in the back corner, away from the main pathways. The lock was dusty, clearly not opened in years. Helena's hand trembled as she inserted the key. The door rolled open with a metallic screech. Inside, the unit was larger than she remembered, about 10 feet by 10 feet, lit by a single bare bulb. Cardboard boxes were stacked against the walls, labeled in her father's handwriting. Financial, 2010-2015. Contracts, MISC. Personal correspondence. But what caught Helena's attention was the antique trunk in the center of the space. It was beautiful, dark mahogany with brass fixtures, the kind of trunk that looked like it belonged in a museum. Intricate carvings covered its surface, patterns that seemed almost deliberate in their complexity. Helena knelt beside it, running her fingers over the carvings. They weren't random decorations. They were symbols, repeating in a sequence. She recognized some from her father's office. He had carved similar patterns into a wooden pen holder she'd seen on his desk. The trunk's lock was different from the storage units. It required a combination, 4 rotating dials with symbols instead of numbers. Helena sat back thinking. Her father had always been methodical, careful. If he'd left this for her, he would have left her a way to open it. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through old photos looking for images of her father's office. There, a close-up of his desk she'd taken years ago, showing the carved pen holder. She zoomed in on the symbols, 4 symbols in sequence. An eye, a key, a book, a flame. Helena aligned the trunk's combination dials to match. The lock clicked open. Inside the trunk, nestled in aged velvet, were a leather journal, worn and filled with her father's handwriting. A small wooden box with a symbol carved into its lid, the same symbol from the trunk's surface. A flash drive in a protective case, an old cassette tape labeled in her father's writing, "For Helena, play only when alone," and a sealed manila envelope with her name written across the front in thick black marker. Helena's hands shook as she reached for the journal first. She opened it to a random page. March 15th. V is becoming more insistent about Marcus taking over. She doesn't understand, or doesn't care, that the company needs vision, not just a figurehead. Marcus has no real interest in the work. He wants the status, the wealth, but not the responsibility. Helena showed me her analysis of the Meridian merger today, unprompted. She saw flaws in the contract that my legal team missed. She's 23 years old and already thinking 3 moves ahead. This is who should lead when I'm gone. But V will fight me. She sees Helena as a threat to Marcus's inheritance. I need to be careful. I need to protect Helena without V knowing what I'm planning. Helena's eyes filled with tears. She flipped to another page. June 3rd. Hutchinson suggested I update my will. His timing is suspicious. V put him up to it. I went along, drafted something that temporarily appeases her, but I'm keeping the real succession plan separate. Helena needs time to grow into the role without V's interference. I'll wait until H turns 25, then make the final changes. By then, V won't be able to contest it. H will be established enough to defend herself. Helena was 24 when her father died. He had died 1 year before implementing his plan to protect her. Or had he been killed to prevent it? The thought hit her like a physical blow. She quickly flipped through more pages, looking for anything about her father's health, his death, any indication of foul play. August 20th. Not feeling well lately. V insists it's stress. Pushes her doctor on me. I don't trust her concern. There's something in her eyes when she watches me take medication now. Something calculating. I'm being paranoid, perhaps. Grief over losing Sarah, Helena's mother, made me suspicious of everyone, but my instincts have kept me alive in business this long. Starting to take precautions. Moving documents to the storage unit, recording certain conversations. If something happens to me, Helena needs to know the truth. Helena's breath caught. Her father had suspected Vivian. Had he been poisoned? Made sick deliberately? She set the journal aside and picked up the cassette tape, but she had no way to play it. Cassette players weren't exactly common anymore. She'd need to find one, or get the tape converted. Next, she opened the small wooden box. Inside was a key, not a normal key, but an antique skeleton key with elaborate teeth. Attached to it was a small tag, with an address written in her father's handwriting. Grayson and Associates, 1847 Montgomery Street, Suite 12. Helena didn't recognize the name or address. It wasn't any law firm or business partner she'd heard of. Finally, she picked up the flash drive. Her laptop was in her car. She could review its contents later. But first, the envelope. She unsealed it carefully, pulling out several pages of typed text. A letter from her father, dated 3 weeks before his death. My dearest Helena, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have been realized. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I tried to protect you, to prepare you, but I ran out of time. Everything you've been told about your place in this family is a lie. You are not an afterthought. You are not the spare child. You were always meant to be my successor, the true heir to everything I built. Vivian has been poisoning me. Not quickly. She's too smart for that. Slowly, methodically, with something that mimics natural illness. My doctors are confused, but I know, I can feel it. The symptoms started 3 months after I told her I was revising my will to name you as primary beneficiary. I have documented everything. The original will naming you as heir. Recordings of conversations where V and Marcus discuss their plans, financial records showing payments to Hutchinson for his cooperation, and evidence of V's access to medications that are slowly destroying my liver. The flash drive contains all of it. The recordings are on the cassette tape. I know, old-fashioned, but harder to hack. The key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank, box 447, under my mother's maiden name, Margaret Whitmore. Inside that box are the original documents they will try to destroy. Helena, they are going to try to erase you from this family's history. They will forge my signature, manipulate the will, turn your brother against you, and paint you as unstable or greedy if you fight back. Your silence, the very thing they trained into you, is their greatest weapon against you. But I've given you everything you need to fight back. Use that silence, sweetheart. Let them think you've accepted defeat. Let them believe you're too weak, too compliant, too well trained to challenge them, and then strike. When you do, remember this. The truth doesn't need to be loud to be devastating. Sometimes the quietest voices shatter the most foundations. I'm sorry I won't be there to see you become who you were always meant to be. But know that I believe in you. I have always believed in you. The silence they gave you. It was never yours to carry alone. It was always the weapon that would set you free. With all my love. Dad. Helena read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face, her father's words both validating every suspicion and breaking her heart with their prescience. He had known. He had known exactly what Vivian would do, and he had prepared accordingly. She carefully photographed every page of the journal, made copies of the letter, and secured the flash drive in her pocket. The cassette tape and the key she wrapped in a scarf and placed in her purse. As she closed the trunk and prepared to leave the storage unit, Helena noticed something she'd missed before. Carved into the inside of the trunk's lid was one final message from her father. Words that seemed to glow in the dim light. If you want to find what they've hidden, look where they told you never to look. The answer is in the silence they created. Helena locked the storage unit and drove directly to an electronics store. She bought a cassette player, a high-quality scanner, and 2 external hard drives. Then she checked into a different hotel, one on the opposite side of the city, paying cash and using a fake name. In her new room, she spread out everything she'd found. She connected the flash drive to her laptop, her heart pounding as files began to appear on the screen. There were dozens of audio recordings, video files, and scanned documents. Helena clicked on the first audio file, dated 8 months before her father's death. Her father's voice filled the room, tinny through laptop speakers, but unmistakable. Recording dated March 12th, meeting with Gerald Hutchinson regarding will revision. This is being documented for legal protection. Then Hutchinson's voice, Richard, I have to advise you that naming Helena as primary beneficiary will create significant family conflict. Marcus has been groomed for this role. Vivian expects... I'm not interested in what Vivian expects, her father interrupted. This is my company, my legacy, and my decision. Helena has the intelligence, the integrity, and the vision to lead. Marcus has potential, but he needs years of development first. I'm establishing trusts for him, generous ones, but the company goes to Helena. Vivian will contest this. She'll claim undue influence, mental incompetence, anything she can. Then we document everything meticulously. I want 3 independent psychiatric evaluations confirming my competence. I want video recordings of me signing the will. I want Helena present, so there's no question of my intentions. Make it ironclad, Gerald. There was a long pause. Then Hutchinson's voice, quieter now. And if Vivian makes it difficult for you to proceed? What are you implying? I'm just saying she has a lot to lose. And people with a lot to lose sometimes take drastic measures. If anything happens to me before this will is filed, you make sure Helena gets these recordings, you understand? That's not a request, Gerald. That's a legal instruction. Of course. But Richard, consider what you're doing. You're essentially accusing your wife of being capable of... I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm being prudent. Now, are you going to help me protect my daughter, or do I need to find an attorney who will? The recording ended. Helena sat back, her mind reeling. Her father had seen it coming. He had tried to protect her. And Hutchinson had been warned, and had betrayed that trust anyway. She clicked through more files. There were recordings of arguments between her father and Vivian, videos of Marcus admitting he had no interest in actually running the company, and financial records showing payments from Vivian's personal accounts to various doctors, lawyers, and what appeared to be a private investigator. But the most damning evidence was in a folder labeled medical documentation. Inside were toxicology reports her father had ordered privately, without Vivian's knowledge. They showed steadily increasing levels of a rare chemical compound in his system, something that would cause liver damage over time, mimicking natural disease. And attached to those reports was a photograph, a prescription bottle in Vivian's name for a medication that, according to her father's notes, contained the same compound found in his bloodstream. Helena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the mouse. This wasn't just fraud, this wasn't just forgery, this was murder. Vivian had killed her father, slowly, methodically, deliberately, and then she had stolen Helena's inheritance to cover it up. Helena picked up the cassette tape with trembling fingers and inserted it into the player. Static crackled for a moment, then her father's voice, weaker now, recorded clearly in the hospital. Helena, if you're hearing this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have acted faster, should have protected you better, but I want you to know, everything you need is in the storage unit. Everything to prove what Vivian did, to prove that you were always meant to lead. Don't let them silence you, baby. Don't let them take what's yours. You are stronger than they ever gave you credit for. You are smarter than they ever acknowledged, and you are the only person I trust with my legacy. Fight for it, Helena. Fight for yourself, and know that wherever I am so proud of who you've become. There was a long pause, the sound of labored breathing. The password to everything is your mother's favorite quote, you remember, the one about silence and storms. Use it when you're ready, and Helena, when you bring them down, when you will bring them down, do it quietly. The loudest victories are often the most fragile, the quiet ones. Those last forever. The recording ended. Helena was sobbing now, but through her tears she was smiling. Her mother's favorite quote. She remembered it perfectly. Her mother used to say it when Helena was scared, when the world felt too big and overwhelming. Be silent like the storm gathering. When you finally speak, let them remember why they should have listened all along. Helena wiped her eyes, her grief transforming into something else, something harder, something sharp. She had everything she needed. Her father had documented his own murder, exposed the forgery, and left her the evidence to destroy everyone who had wronged them both. Now she just needed to decide how to use it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Armand, this is James Grayson from Grayson & Associates. Your father left instructions that I contact you 1 week after his funeral. We need to meet. It concerns your inheritance. Please respond ASAP. Helena looked at the skeleton key her father had left her. Grayson & Associates, the address on the tag. Her father's plan was even more extensive than she'd realized. She texted back, tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'll be there. Then she opened her laptop and began making copies of everything, uploading files to secure cloud storage, burning backup drives, preparing for every possible contingency. Vivian thought she had won. She thought Helena was defeated, compliant, broken. She had no idea that the silent daughter she'd spent years suppressing was about to become the loudest storm the Armand family had ever faced. And by the time Vivian realized her mistake, it would be far too late. Grayson & Associates occupied the 12th floor of a building that had clearly seen better days. The elevator wheezed and groaned on its ascent, and the hallway carpet was worn thin in places. This was not the kind of place someone like Richard Armand would normally conduct business, which was exactly why he'd chosen it. Helena knocked on the frosted glass door marked Suite 12. A voice called out, "Come in." The office inside was cluttered, but purposeful. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves crammed with legal texts, a desk covered in files and coffee cups, and seated behind it all was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a ponytail. James Grayson stood and extended his hand. "Ms. Armand, I've been expecting you. Please, sit." Helena took the chair across from his desk, her purse clutched tightly in her lap, the skeleton key burning a hole in her pocket. "I have to admit," she said carefully, "I've never heard my father mention you or this firm." Grayson smiled sadly. "That was intentional. Your father and I went to law school together, many years ago. We stayed in touch over the decades, though our paths diverged significantly. When he needed someone outside his normal circle, someone his family wouldn't know about, he came to me. When was this? About 9 months ago." Grayson pulled a file from his desk drawer. He said he needed to create a parallel estate plan, something completely separate from his official will, something that Gerald Hutchinson and your stepmother couldn't access or manipulate. Helena leaned forward. "What kind of estate plan?" "A comprehensive one. Trust funds, property transfers, corporate shares, all structured to activate upon his death, but only if certain conditions were met." Grayson opened the file. "Your father was convinced that his official will would be compromised." "He was right, wasn't he?" "The signature was forged," Helena said quietly. "I have proof." Grayson nodded, unsurprised. Richard suspected as much. That's why he created a failsafe. He transferred 35% of Armand Corporation shares to a private trust 6 months before his death. "Those shares are legally yours, Helena. Hutchinson doesn't know they exist because they were never part of the estate being probated. They were gifted to you directly, months before your father died, through a series of legal mechanisms specifically designed to be invisible to anyone checking his official assets." Helena's breath caught. 35%. "But that's enough to challenge any major decision Marcus makes," Grayson finished. "Your father also created trusts for several properties, the lake house in upstate, the apartment in Manhattan, and a commercial building in the financial district, all technically gifted to you before his death, all legally yours, none of which appeared in the will Hutchinson read. Why didn't you come forward at the reading?" "Because your father's instructions were explicit. Wait 1 week. Let them think they've won. Let them consolidate their victory, get comfortable, make mistakes, and then reveal the truth when they least expect it." Grayson slid a thick envelope across the desk. "These are the official documents. Notarized, filed with the SEC, completely legal and indisputable. Your father also left you something else." He pulled out an old leather address book. Richard kept this separate from everything else. These are contacts he trusted, people he did business with away from Vivian's influence, relationships she didn't know about. He wanted you to have access to his real network, not just the social circle she controlled. Helena flipped through the pages. Names, addresses, and phone numbers, many with notes in her father's handwriting. Helped with the Riverside deal, trustworthy. Knows about V's background, willing to talk, former investigator, can verify timeline. "There's one more thing," Grayson said. his expression growing more serious. Your father hired a private investigator about 8 months ago. Someone discreet, someone good. He was documenting your stepmother's activities, her background, her history, before she married your father. Did he find anything? Oh, yes. Grayson pulled out another folder, this one thicker. Vivienne Armand wasn't always Vivienne Armand. Her real name is Vivienne Castellano. She was married twice before your father. Both husbands died under mysterious circumstances, both leaving significant wealth to her. The first husband's death was ruled a heart attack. The second was labeled suicide. Both families contested the inheritance, claiming foul play, but nothing was ever proven. Helena felt ice forming in her stomach. She's done this before. The investigator believes so. He found patterns. Insurance policies taken out shortly before each husband's death. Subtle changes to wills. Convenient witnesses who suddenly disappeared. Your father was building a case, Helena, not just about the inheritance fraud, but about murder. Multiple murders. Where is this investigator now? Thomas Reeves. He's still working the case at your father's request. Payment was arranged in advance to continue the investigation for 6 months after Richard's death. Grayson wrote down an address and phone number. He's been waiting to hear from you. Helena took the paper with shaking hands. My father thought of everything. He was terrified for you, Grayson said gently. Not just of what Vivienne would do to his estate, but what she might do to you if you became a threat. That's why he created this elaborate system, to protect you, to arm you with evidence, to make sure you had resources she couldn't control. Did my father know she was killing him? Grayson's eyes were sad. Yes, he figured it out about 2 months before he died. He started documenting everything, his symptoms, the medications Vivienne was giving him, the doctors she insisted he see. He even had private toxicology tests done. The results are in the storage unit, I believe. I found them yesterday. Then you know. She poisoned him slowly, carefully, making it look like natural illness. And by the time Richard realized what was happening, it was too far progressed to treat without raising alarm. He made a choice, spend his remaining time building a case to protect you, or spend it in hospitals fighting a battle he'd probably lose anyway. He chose me, Helena whispered. He always chose you. That's what Vivienne never understood. She thought Richard's distance from you was indifference. It was actually protection. Every time he pulled away, every time he seemed to favor Marcus, he was trying to make you less of a target. He was trying to make Vivienne believe you were no threat. Helena felt tears sliding down her face. All those years of feeling unwanted, unvalued, invisible, and her father had been protecting her the entire time, preparing her for this exact moment. What do I do now? She asked. Now? Grayson leaned back in his chair. Now you have several options. You can go public immediately with everything you found at the forgery, the murder evidence, the hidden assets. It would be devastating and immediate. Or, he paused significantly, you can be strategic. You can use your 35% share position to attend the next board meeting. You can start asking questions publicly that Vivienne can't answer. You can slowly, methodically dismantle her credibility before delivering the killing blow. Why the second option? Because if you go public now, they'll lawyer up. They'll tie everything in litigation for years. They'll claim you're grief-stricken, unreliable, making false accusations. But if you establish yourself first, show the board you're competent, rational, engaged, then when you present the evidence, they'll have no defense. You won't just destroy Vivienne's credibility, you'll destroy any possibility of her recovering from this. Helena thought about her father's words on the cassette tape. Do it quietly. The loudest victories are often the most fragile. The quiet ones, those last forever. I want to do it right, she said. I want to make sure when I bring them down, they stay down. Grayson smiled. That's exactly what your father hoped you'd say. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. This is Elaine Morrison. She's a securities lawyer specializing in corporate fraud. Your father retained her 3 months ago and paid her in advance. She's been waiting for you to make contact. She'll help you navigate the legal complexities of using your shares and filing the necessary complaints. And the murder charges? That will require the district attorney's office. But Thomas Reeves has been building the case. Once you're ready, he can present everything to the DA along with the evidence from your father's private investigation. The case is strong, Helena. Your father made sure of that. Helena stood, clutching the folders and papers to her chest. Mr. Grayson, why did you help him? Why risk being involved in all this? Grayson stood as well, his expression thoughtful. Because 35 years ago, Richard Armand lent me money when no one else would. I'd just passed the bar, had no connections, no clients, nothing but ambition and student debt. He believed in me when I was invisible. He gave me a chance when everyone else looked through me. He smiled. Sound familiar? Helena felt her throat tighten. Your father never forgot what it was like to be underestimated, Grayson continued. That's why he recognized your value when no one else did. And that's why I'll do everything in my power to make sure his plan succeeds. Not just because he was my friend, but because what Vivian did, erasing you, stealing from you, poisoning him, that's not just illegal, it's unconscionable. Helena shook his hand, holding it firmly. Thank you for everything. Thank your father, Grayson said. He's the one who orchestrated all of this. I'm just following his playbook. As Helena left the office, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Armand, this is Thomas Reeves. James Grayson said you'd be contacting me. I have additional evidence regarding your stepmother that your father didn't live to see. We need to meet. This is bigger than you know. Helena's fingers tightened on her phone. Every door she opened led to another revelation, another layer of her father's protection, another piece of evidence against Vivian. Her father hadn't just left her weapons. He'd left her an entire arsenal. And now, finally, Helena was ready to use it. Thomas Reeves looked nothing like Helena expected a private investigator to look. Instead of the grizzled, cynical detective from crime shows, he was a neat man in his early 50s with careful eyes and the methodical demeanor of someone who dealt in facts, not drama. They met at a coffee shop 3 towns over from the Armand estate, somewhere Vivian's extensive social network was unlikely to reach. Your father hired me 8 months before his death, Reeves began without preamble, sliding a thick folder across the table. Initially, it was routine due diligence. He wanted background on some business partners, but then he asked me to look into Vivian. What did you find? A pattern. Reeves opened the folder, revealing photographs, documents, timelines. Vivian Castellano, born 1979 in Newark, New Jersey. First marriage at 23 to David Porter, a wealthy real estate developer, 30 years her senior. He died 2 years later of a sudden heart attack. Autopsy was clean, death was ruled natural causes. Vivian inherited everything, approximately $4 million. He slid another photo across. Second marriage at 28 to Gregory Hutchinson. Hutchinson, Helena interrupted. Like Gerald Hutchinson. His older brother. Gregory was a successful investment banker. Married Vivian in 2007. By 2009 he was dead. Apparent suicide, jumped from his office building. But here's where it gets interesting. 3 people who worked with Gregory claimed he'd been acting strange in the weeks before his death. Paranoid, forgetful, physically ill. Symptoms consistent with certain types of poisoning. Did they investigate? Gerald Hutchinson made sure they didn't. He was executor of his brother's estate. Pushed hard for the suicide ruling. Quietly settled with anyone asking too many questions. Vivian inherited $15 million from Gregory, plus life insurance. Helena felt sick. And then she met my father at a charity gala in 2012. Your father was still grieving your mother. She'd died the year before. Vivian presented herself as a widow who understood his pain. They married quickly. Within 8 months, Reeves pulled out another document. Your father was worth approximately $200 million at the time. Now with the company's growth, that estate is worth close to $500 million. The biggest prize yet, Helena whispered. Exactly. But your father was smarter than her previous marks. He kept most assets in corporate structures she couldn't easily access. He maintained separate accounts. And critically, he never fully trusted her. Reeves tapped another folder. About 6 months into their marriage, your father hired his first investigator to do a basic background check. That investigator found the 2 previous husbands, flagged it as suspicious, but ultimately couldn't prove anything concrete. Your father stayed alert after that. Why didn't he divorce her? I asked him that myself. He said 2 things. First, he was worried about what she might do if cornered. And second, Reeves looked uncomfortable. He was worried about you. Vivian had been systematically isolating you from him for years. He was afraid that if he moved against her directly, she'd turn Marcus completely against you, poison whatever relationship you might salvage with your brother. He wanted to wait until you were older, more established, better able to defend yourself. So he sacrificed himself instead, Helena said bitterly. He bought you time, Reeves corrected gently, and he made sure I had everything needed to bury her. He pulled out the largest folder yet, This is everything I've compiled over the past 8 months, plus additional investigation I've continued since your father's death. Here's what we have. Financial records showing Vivian systematically moved money from Richard's personal accounts to offshore holdings in the months before his death. Communications between Vivian and Gerald Hutchinson discussing timeline adjustments and necessary steps, coded language, but damning in context. Medical evidence showing your father was being dosed with a rare compound found in certain veterinary medications. Medications Vivian had access to through a friend who owns a thoroughbred racing stable. Witness statements from hospital staff who observed Vivian bringing your father supplements and vitamins against doctor's orders. Video footage from your father's private office security system, footage Vivian doesn't know exists, showing her forging his signature on multiple documents, including the final will. The forged will itself, with forensic analysis proving the signature is fake, and, most damningly, recordings from your father's phone. He'd set it to automatically record whenever Vivian entered his study, capturing her discussing the inheritance plan with Gerald Hutchinson, including explicit mentions of handling Helena and making sure she can't contest. Helena stared at the mountain of evidence, overwhelmed. This is enough to prosecute her for murder. Multiple murders, Reeves corrected. I've also been working with investigators in New Jersey and New York. Both previous cases are being reopened based on this new evidence. The pattern is undeniable. What about Gerald Hutchinson? Accessory to fraud at minimum. Possibly accessory to murder if we can prove he knew about the poisoning. The recordings suggest he suspected but didn't act. That's criminal negligence at best, conspiracy at worst. Reeves leaned forward. Helena, when this breaks, it's going to be massive. We're talking about a serial killer who married for money, a corrupted attorney who helped her, and one of the state's most prominent families imploding in real time. You need to be prepared for the media circus. I don't care about the media. I care about justice. Good, because justice is what your father wanted. Reeves pulled out one final envelope, this one sealed with wax, stamped with Richard Armand's initials. He left this for you. Instructions on how to proceed, what order to reveal evidence, who to contact. He even drafted a statement for you to give to the police. Everything you need to bring them down in the most devastating, irreversible way possible. Helena took the envelope with trembling hands and broke the seal. Inside was a letter in her father's handwriting, but not the emotional farewell from the storage unit. This was tactical, strategic, a battle plan written by a man who knew he was dying but refused to let his killers win. Helena, by now you have evidence of fraud, forgery, and murder. You have resources Vivian doesn't know about. You have allies she never suspected. Here's how we destroy her. Step 1. Attend the next Armand Corporation board meeting using your 35% share position. Make your presence known. Ask innocent questions that force Marcus and Vivian to reveal their incompetence. Step 2. 1 week later, file a formal challenge to the will with the probate court, presenting forensic evidence of forgery. Make it public. Step 3. Simultaneously, provide all evidence of poisoning to the district attorney. Request a criminal investigation into my death and the deaths of Vivian's previous husbands. Step 4. Use media strategically. Elaine Morrison has contacts at major newspapers. Release the story when Vivian is most vulnerable. After the board meeting, after the will challenge, when she has no time to construct a defense. Step 5. Watch it all collapse. You won't need to be loud, Helena. The evidence speaks for itself. Your role is simply to present it calmly, clearly, undeniably. Let your silence, the silence they forced on you, be what destroys them. Because in that silence, you learn to listen. You learn to observe. You learn to see what they thought you'd never notice. They trained their own executioner. Make them remember that. With love and faith in you always, Dad Helena read the letter 3 times. Her father's strategic mind evident in every instruction. He hadn't just given her weapons, he'd given her a deployment strategy. She looked up at Reeves. When's the next board meeting? In 5 days. Friday at 2 p.m. Then that's when we start. Helena carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Mr. Reeves, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need you to notify the district attorney that you're prepared to present evidence in a murder investigation, but tell them not to act until I give the signal. I want Vivian to feel safe for 4 more days. I want her confident, comfortable, completely unprepared for what's coming. Reeves smiled grimly. Your father would be proud. You think exactly like him. No, Helena said, her voice steady, her eyes hard. I think like the daughter he raised to be silent. And that's so much more dangerous than anyone realized. She stood, gathering the folders. I'll contact you after the board meeting. Be ready to move fast. I've been ready for 8 months, Reeves said. The question is, are you ready? Helena thought about all the years of being ignored, dismissed, erased. She thought about her father dying slowly, while Vivian smiled and played the devoted wife. She thought about Marcus celebrating an inheritance he didn't earn and didn't deserve. I was born ready, she said. I just didn't know it yet. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but when it did, it was absolute. Helena spent 3 days preparing. She hired Elaine Morrison, the securities lawyer her father had retained. She met with Thomas Reeves twice more to rehearse timelines and evidence. She studied Armand Corporation's recent financial reports, familiarizing herself with every project, every investment, every decision Marcus had made in the 2 weeks since assuming control. And she shopped. Not the modest, forgettable clothes she usually wore, power suits in deep charcoal and navy, Italian leather heels that made her stand 3 inches taller, a leather briefcase that cost more than her monthly hotel bill. She had her hair cut and styled professionally, her makeup done to project confidence rather than invisibility. When Helena looked in the mirror Friday morning before the board meeting, she didn't recognize herself. And that was exactly the point. The person staring back at her wasn't the silent, dismissed daughter anymore. She was someone else entirely. A woman who owned 35% of a major corporation, who had evidence of crimes in her briefcase, who had spent her entire life being underestimated and was about to make everyone pay for that mistake. Armand Corporation headquarters occupied 40 stories of steel and glass in the heart of the financial district. Helena had been there only a handful of times, always as a visitor, never as someone who belonged. That changed today. She walked through the lobby with purpose, her heels clicking against marble, her head high. The security guard barely glanced at her credentials before waving her through. Her name was on the list of shareholders now, her 35% stake giving her access to everything. The executive elevator was full of men in expensive suits, none of whom acknowledged her presence. They were too busy discussing Marcus's latest decisions, some expressing concern about his inexperience, others confident that Vivienne will guide him. Helena said nothing, just listened. The boardroom was on the 40th floor, a space designed to intimidate with its floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city and its enormous mahogany table that could seat 20. Board members were already gathering, 12 men and 3 women, most of them her father's generation, some who had known Helena since childhood. Not one of them had called to check on her after the funeral. Marcus stood at the head of the table where their father used to stand, talking with Gerald Hutchinson, both of them laughing about something. Vivienne sat nearby, perfectly groomed, perfectly poised, the picture of a supportive stepmother. Helena stood in the doorway for a full 10 seconds before anyone noticed her. The first to see her was Andrew Chen, the CFO, a man who had worked with her father for 20 years. His eyes widened slightly in recognition, then confusion. Helena? The room went silent. Every head turned. Marcus's smile faltered. Vivienne's expression cycled through surprise, calculation, and finally settled on polite hostility. Helena, Vivienne said, her voice dripping with false warmth. What a surprise. We weren't expecting you, dear. I'm a shareholder, Helena replied evenly, walking into the room and setting her briefcase on the table. I have every right to be here. Shareholder? Marcus looked confused. You don't have shares. The inheritance you received excluded shares that were gifted to me before father's death. Helena interrupted calmly, pulling out documentation. 35% of Armand Corporation transferred legally and irrevocably 6 months ago. You can verify it with the SEC. She slid copies across the table to each board member. Elaine Morrison had prepared them beautifully, every page stamped, certified, undeniable. Hutchinson had gone pale. Vivian's jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. This is unexpected, said Margaret Torres, one of the board members, scanning the documents. But it appears to be legitimate. Of course it's legitimate, Helena said, taking a seat at the table, not at the end, not in a subordinate position, but near the middle where she could see everyone. My father was meticulous about legal matters, as you all know. The implication hung in the air. Well, Marcus said, trying to recover, it's good to have you here, Helena. Family should be involved in family business. I agree completely, Helena said with a small smile. which is why I have some questions about recent decisions. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. The Meridian merger that was approved last week. Can you walk me through the due diligence process? Marcus blinked. The due diligence? Yes. What analysis was done on Meridian's debt structure? How do their liabilities integrate with our balance sheet? What's the projected ROI timeline? Marcus looked at Vivian, then at Hutchinson. It's a sound deal. Our advisors... I've reviewed the contract, Helena interrupted gently. There's a liability clause on page 47 that exposes Armand Corporation to approximately $30 million in potential losses if Meridian's pending litigation goes against them. Were you aware of that clause? The room was silent. Board members were now flipping through their own copies of the merger documents. We have lawyers reviewing, Marcus stammered. The litigation case is weak, Hutchinson interjected. The risk is minimal. Interesting, Helena said, still calm, because I spoke with 3 independent legal experts this week. All 3 rate the risk as high to severe. Meridian is likely to lose, which means we're likely to absorb significant debt. She looked directly at Marcus. Did your advisors mention that? Marcus's face was reddening. Several board members were now whispering to each other, concern evident. Perhaps we should table this discussion, Vivian said smoothly, until Marcus has time to review. And the Riverside property sale, Helena continued, turning to another document. Sold for $22 million to a subsidiary of Hutchinson Legal Services. Market analysis puts that property's value at $35 million. Why did we sell $13 million below market value to our own attorney's company? Hutchinson's face went from pale to red. That sale was conducted through proper channels. Was it? Helena pulled out another paper. Because I have the original appraisal from 6 months ago, signed by Father, valuing it at $35 million. And I have the revised appraisal from 3 weeks ago after Father's death, suddenly valuing it at $22 million. Same property, same market conditions, $13 million difference. Can you explain that? The room erupted in murmurs. Board members were no longer just concerned. They were alarmed. Helena, Vivian said, her voice taking on a sharper edge, I understand you're upset about the inheritance, but making accusations... I'm not making accusations, Helena said, her voice still perfectly calm. I'm asking questions. As a 35% shareholder, that's my right. Unless you'd prefer I ask these questions somewhere more public. The threat was subtle, but clear. Marcus stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I've been running this company for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, you can't expect... I can't expect competence, Helena finished. I can't expect that the person in charge understands basic due diligence. I can't expect that our company's assets aren't being sold at a loss to companies owned by family friends. That's enough. Vivian stood now too, her composure cracking. You're disrupting this meeting with baseless... Are they baseless? Andrew Chen interrupted, surprising everyone. He was looking at the documents Helena had distributed. Because these numbers don't look good. If what Helena's saying is true, we've made 2 significant errors in Marcus's first 2 weeks. Other board members nodded, reviewing their own copies. I'm calling for an emergency audit, Helena said calmly, of all decisions made since Father's death. Full transparency, independent reviewers. If everything is as legitimate as you claim, you have nothing to worry about. You can't just call for an audit, Hutchinson protested. Actually, according to corporate bylaws, any shareholder with more than 25% can petition for an emergency audit if they have reasonable suspicion of mismanagement. I have 35% and documented concerns. Helena looked around the table. Unless someone wants to challenge my interpretation of the bylaws? No one did. This is a witch hunt, Vivian hissed. You're bitter about being excluded. I'm excluded from nothing, Helena said, her voice finally taking on an edge. I'm a major shareholder, I'm my father's daughter, and I have every right to ensure this company is being run properly. She paused. Unless there's some reason you don't want transparency? Vivian's eyes flashed with something dangerous. Marcus, looking between Helena and Vivian, seemed lost. Maybe an audit isn't a bad idea, he said weakly. Just to clear everything up. Marcus, don't be ridiculous, Vivian snapped. The board will vote, Margaret Torres said, taking control. All in favor of Helena Armand's petition for an emergency audit. 11 hands went up. Only Hutchinson and 2 board members closely tied to Vivian's social circle abstained. Motion passes, Torres announced. Gerald, arrange for independent auditors, full access, all documents from the past 6 months. Hutchinson looked like he might be sick. Helena closed her briefcase and stood. "Thank you for your time. I look forward to reviewing the audit results." She looked directly at Vivienne. "Transparency is so important in family businesses, don't you think?" She walked out of the boardroom without waiting for a response, her heart pounding but her face composed. As soon as she reached the elevator, her phone buzzed. A text from Elaine Morrison. "Brilliant. They're panicking. Next phase?" Helena typed back, "Give them 3 days to worry, then we file the will challenge." That evening, Helena returned to her hotel to find Marcus waiting in the lobby. He looked terrible, haggard, stressed, years older than he had that morning. "Helena, please, can we talk?" She considered refusing, then nodded. 5 minutes. They sat in the hotel bar, away from other guests. Marcus ordered a whiskey and downed half of it immediately. "You humiliated me today," he said. "I asked questions. You made me look incompetent in front of the board." "Are you competent?" Helena asked directly. "Do you actually understand the merger you approved? The property you sold?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "Vivienne said I didn't need to worry about details, that Hutchinson would handle everything, that my job was to be the face of the company while they managed operations. And you believed her? She's been managing things since Dad got sick. I thought—" He trailed off. "I thought that's just how it worked." Helena felt a flicker of something. Not quite sympathy, but recognition. Marcus wasn't evil. He was weak, manipulated, used. "Marcus, what did Vivienne tell you about the will?" "That Dad wanted me to lead, that it was always the plan, that you weren't interested in the business." "Did you ever ask Dad directly?" Marcus's silence was answer enough. "She's using you," Helena said bluntly. "She's making decisions in your name, selling company assets to enrich herself and Hutchinson, and when it all falls apart, you'll be the one blamed." "That's not—" Marcus started, then stopped. "The audit. If there are problems, they'll come after me." "Yes. What do I do?" Helena studied her brother. He looked genuinely scared, genuinely lost. For years, she'd resented him for being chosen, celebrated, valued. Now she realized he'd been a pawn just like her. Different role, same manipulation. "Tell me the truth," Helena said. "Did you know about the signature on the will?" "What signature?" "Dad's signature, on the document that cut me out. Did you know it was forged?" Marcus's eyes went wide. "Forged? Helena, what are you talking about?" He looked genuinely shocked. Either he was an excellent actor, or he'd been kept in the dark. "The will that Hutchinson read," Helena said carefully. "Dad didn't sign it. Someone forged his signature." That's impossible," Vivienne said. Marcus stopped, his face going pale. "Oh, God, she did it. She actually—" He looked at Helena with something like horror. "You're going to expose her?" "Yes. And me, you're going to destroy both of us." "You?" Helena shook her head. "Marcus, I don't want to destroy you. I want to destroy the people who killed our father and stole from both of us." "Both of us?" "Dad left you substantial trusts, real inheritance, not this puppet CEO position Vivienne created. You would have been taken care of, free to find your own path. Instead, she's forcing you into a role you're not ready for so she can control the company through you." Marcus put his head in his hands. "I'm so screwed." "Not if you help me." He looked up. "Help you?" "Testify about what Vivienne told you, about how she guided every decision, about any conversations you witnessed between her and Hutchinson. Give me evidence of her control." "She'll destroy me." "She's already destroying you," Helena pointed out. "The only question is whether you go down as her accomplice or her victim." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Finally, "What happens to me if I cooperate?" "You step down as CEO, acknowledge you were manipulated, help prosecute Vivienne and Hutchinson, and then you get your actual inheritance, the trusts Dad set up for you, which are substantial, and you build your own life away from all of this. And if I don't, then you're complicit in fraud and possibly accessory to murder." Marcus's hands were shaking. "Murder? Dad didn't die of natural causes, Marcus. Vivienne poisoned him, slowly, over months, and there's evidence." "Jesus Christ." Marcus looked like he might throw up. "She was in his room every day at the hospital. She brought him supplements, vitamins, the same supplements that were killing him." Marcus stood abruptly. "I need time. I need to think." "You have 2 days," Helena said. "After that, the will challenge goes public. After that, the criminal investigation starts. After that, you're either a witness or a defendant. Choose wisely." Marcus left without another word. Helena sat alone at the bar, her untouched wine in front of her. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just exhaustion and the weight of what was coming. Her phone buzzed again, this time from Thomas Reeves. "Vivienne just called me. Offered me $500K to bury the investigation. I recorded the call. We have her attempting witness tampering." Helena closed her eyes. Vivienne was desperate, making mistakes, exactly as her father had predicted. She texted back, "Save the recording. Add it to the file." The net was tightening. The silent daughter Vivienne had spent years dismissing was about to become the loudest voice in her destruction, and there was no escape now. None at all. The Armand Annual Gala was an institution in society circles. 200 guests, black tie, 5-course dinner, held every year on the anniversary of Armand Corporation's founding. It was equal parts celebration, networking opportunity, and display of wealth. This year it was scheduled for Sunday evening, 3 days after Helena's board meeting confrontation. Vivienne had tried to uninvite Helena through a terse email. "Given recent tensions, perhaps it's best if you sit this year out." Helena's response had been simple: "I'll be there." Because Helena knew something Vivienne didn't. Her father had planned this moment years ago. In the sealed envelope from Grayson's office, Richard Armand had left specific instructions. "The annual gala is the perfect stage. Everyone who matters will be there. Every business partner, every social connection, every person whose opinion shapes the family reputation. That's when you reveal everything. Not in a courtroom where it's abstract and legal. In front of everyone they've spent years impressing. Make them watch their empire crumble in real time." Helena arrived at the estate at 7:30, 30 minutes after the official start time. Late enough to make an entrance, early enough to catch everyone before dinner. She wore a floor-length gown in midnight blue, elegant but not ostentatious. Her hair was swept up, her makeup perfect. She looked like someone who belonged here. Not the forgotten daughter, but the heiress she'd always been meant to be. The ballroom was magnificent, as always. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across white tablecloths and gold-rimmed china. A string quartet played in the corner. Guests mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter and conversation creating a pleasant hum of privilege. Vivienne stood near the entrance greeting arrivals with Marcus at her side, both playing their roles perfectly. Vivienne wore crimson, a power color, carefully chosen. Marcus wore his father's tuxedo, probably Vivienne's idea, visual symbolism of succession. When Helena entered, the effect was immediate. Conversations faltered, heads turned. Vivienne's smile froze on her face. "Helena," Vivienne said through clenched teeth, her voice too low for nearby guests to hear clearly. "I thought we agreed." "You suggested, I declined." Helena accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "It's the annual gala. Father wouldn't want me to miss it." Several guests were watching now, sensing tension, their social antennae detecting drama. Vivienne couldn't make a scene, not here, not in front of everyone, so she did what she always did, painted on a smile and pretended everything was fine. "Of course, dear. Family should be together on nights like this." Helena moved into the crowd, accepting greetings from people who hadn't spoken to her since the funeral. Word of her board meeting performance had spread through business circles. People were curious now, re-evaluating their dismissal of Richard Armand's daughter. "Helena, darling," said Catherine Pemberton, one of the society matriarchs, "we've missed you at events. Such a terrible loss, your father." "Thank you, Mrs. Pemberton. Father's absence is felt profoundly." "I hear you made quite an impression at the board meeting," Catherine said, her eyes sharp with interest. "Marcus is lucky to have you advising him." "Actually," Helena said clearly, "I'm not advising him. I'm a major shareholder with my own voice. There's a difference." Catherine's eyebrows rose. Around them other guests were listening now. Before Catherine could respond, Vivienne materialized at Helena's elbow. "Excuse us, Catherine. Family matters to discuss." She gripped Helena's arm, gentle-looking but painful, and steered her toward a quiet corner near the terrace doors. "What are you doing?" Vivienne hissed. "Attending a gala. You're poisoning people against Marcus." "I'm simply clarifying my role." Helena pulled her arm free. "Unless there's some reason you don't want people knowing I'm a major shareholder. This is our night, our family's celebration. You're turning it into what? An honest conversation?" Helena smiled coldly. "Father would have wanted honesty, don't you think?" Vivienne's eyes flashed with something dangerous. "You're playing a game you don't understand." "Am I?" Helena leaned in close. "Or am I finally playing the game I was trained for my entire life? The one where I stay quiet, observe everything, and wait for the perfect moment. You have no proof of anything." "Don't I?" Vivian's composure cracked slightly. Whatever you think you found, whatever paranoid conspiracy you've constructed in your grief, the district attorney's office received a package yesterday, Helena said quietly. Evidence of fraud, evidence of forgery, evidence of murder. They're opening an investigation. Vivian went very still. You're bluffing. Call them tomorrow and ask. For just a moment, Helena saw genuine fear in Vivian's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold fury. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you've done. I've done exactly what Father trained me to do. Helena stepped back. Excuse me. I should greet the other guests. She walked away, leaving Vivian trembling with rage. At 8 o'clock, dinner was announced. Guests filed into the formal dining room, finding their assigned seats. Helena's place card had been positioned at a far table away from family. She simply moved it to the main table, between two board members, where her father's place used to be. No one stopped her. Marcus arrived looking worse than he had at the hotel. Pale, exhausted, clearly not sleeping. He avoided Helena's eyes as he took his seat next to Vivian. Gerald Hutchinson was noticeably absent. The first course was served. Vivian stood to give the traditional welcome speech. "Thank you all for joining us on this special evening," she began, her voice perfectly modulated. "The Armand Annual Gala has always been about celebrating legacy, honoring the past while looking toward the future. My late husband, Richard, built something extraordinary with Armand Corporation, and I'm proud to say that legacy continues with his son Marcus at the helm. Actually," Helena said, standing, her voice carrying clearly across the room, "I'd like to add something." The room went silent. This was a breach of protocol. Vivian always gave the only speech. "Helena, this isn't—" Vivian started. "My father built Armand Corporation on principles of integrity, transparency, and truth," Helena continued, addressing the room rather than Vivian. "He believed that reputation mattered less than character, that appearances mattered less than reality." Guests were watching raptly now, sensing something significant happening, which is why he would want everyone here to know the truth about his final wishes, the truth about his death, the truth about what's been done in his name. "Sit down," Vivian commanded. Helena ignored her. "My father's will was forged, his signature falsified. He was excluded from decisions about his own legacy while dying of deliberate poisoning." Gasps rippled through the room. Several guests were pulling out phones, already texting, recording. "That's a lie," Vivian said, but her voice wavered. "It's documented fact." Helena pulled a folder from her clutch. She'd had it hidden there all night. Forensic analysis of the signature, medical evidence of poisoning, recordings of conversations between my stepmother and our family attorney discussing how to handle me. All of it submitted to law enforcement yesterday. She walked toward Vivian, placing the folder on the table. "My father's real will named me as his primary heir. He wanted me to lead Armand Corporation. He wanted Marcus to have time to mature without pressure. He wanted the truth to matter more than Vivian's ambition." "Security," Vivian called out. "Remove her." "On what grounds?" Helena challenged. "This is my father's estate too. These are his guests. And this is his truth, finally being told." Margaret Torres stood from her table. "Vivian, if what Helena's saying is true, it's the ravings of a bitter, jealous—" "It's evidence," Andrew Chen interrupted, also standing. "Evidence that was submitted to authorities. Evidence that's going to become very public, very soon." Other guests were standing now, murmuring, pulling up news alerts on their phones. Several reporters had already posted on social media about the unfolding drama. Helena pulled out one more document, the letter her father had written, his final words. She began reading aloud. "My dearest Helena, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have been realized." As she read, describing her father's suspicions, his discovery of Vivian's past, his attempts to protect Helena, the room remained absolutely silent. Even Vivian couldn't interrupt without making herself look more guilty. When Helena finished, she looked directly at her stepmother. "You killed my father. You forged his will. You tried to erase me from my own family, and you almost got away with it." Helena's voice was steady, devastating in its calm. "But you made one critical mistake." "What mistake?" Vivian spat. "You thought my silence was weakness. You thought because I didn't speak, I wasn't listening. You thought because I didn't fight back, I couldn't fight at all." Helena smiled, cold and final. "You spent my entire life training me to be invisible. And then you forgot that invisible people see everything." The terrace doors burst open. Police officers entered, led by a woman in a detective's badge. "Vivian Armand?" the detective said. I have a warrant for your arrest for the murder of Richard Armand, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." But Vivian wasn't silent. She was screaming, raging, pointing at Helena, calling her a liar, a manipulator, a jealous child. The guests watched, horrified and fascinated, as Vivian Armand, the elegant, sophisticated woman they'd known for years, completely unraveled. As the police led her away in handcuffs, still screaming, Helena remained standing at the head of the table, exactly where her father used to stand. Marcus was crying quietly. Several guests were already leaving, uncomfortable with the spectacle, but many stayed, unable to look away from the daughter who had been invisible for so long, now standing in devastating clarity at the center of it all. Andrew Chen approached Helena carefully. "What happens now?" Helena set down the folder. "Now? The board meets tomorrow for an emergency session. We'll discuss real leadership, real integrity, the kind of company my father actually wanted to build." "And Marcus?" Helena glanced at her brother, who looked utterly broken. "Marcus steps down. He was a victim here too, just a different kind. And you?" Helena looked around the ballroom, at the guests still staring, at the empty seat where Vivian had been, at the place where her father should have been standing. "I do what I was always meant to do," she said quietly. "I lead." The aftermath of the gala was swift and merciless. By Monday morning, every major news outlet was running the story. Armand Heir exposes stepmother's murder plot. Society widow arrested in poisoning scheme. Corporate forgery scandal rocks prominent family. The photographs were everywhere. Vivian in handcuffs being led from the estate. Helena standing at the head of the table looking calm and composed. Marcus with his head in his hands. Armand Corporation's stock initially dropped 15% as investors panicked. But then Helena released a statement, carefully written with Elaine Morrison's help. "Armand Corporation was built on integrity by my father, Richard Armand. Recent actions by individuals seeking personal gain have betrayed that integrity. I'm committed to restoring this company to the principles my father championed: transparency, ethical business practices, and leadership that values substance over appearance. As the company's largest individual shareholder and Richard Armand's chosen successor, I will be working with the board to ensure Armand Corporation not only survives this crisis, but emerges stronger." The market responded. By Wednesday, the stock had recovered, driven by investor confidence in Helena's clear-eyed leadership and the elimination of the fraud that had been secretly bleeding company resources. The board held an emergency meeting on Tuesday. Marcus resigned effective immediately, citing personal reasons and a desire to focus on family healing. No one was fooled, but the resignation was accepted without opposition. Gerald Hutchinson was arrested on Thursday, charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, accessory to forgery, and obstruction of justice. His law firm immediately distanced themselves, claiming he'd acted alone without their knowledge. Vivian's past came flooding out. Reporters discovered the two previous husbands, the suspicious deaths, the pattern of wealth acquisition. New Jersey and New York prosecutors announced they were reopening those investigations. Every society matron who'd once fawned over Vivian now claimed they'd always sensed something off about her. By the end of the second week, Helena was officially named acting CEO of Armand Corporation, pending board approval for a permanent position. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. She moved into her father's office on a rainy Friday afternoon, 2.5 weeks after the gala that changed everything. The office was exactly as he'd left it. No one had dared touch anything during the chaos of the past weeks. His books still lined the shelves, his awards and photos still decorated the walls, his reading glasses still sat on the desk beside a half-empty coffee cup. Helena sat in his chair and let herself cry for the first time since the storage unit. Not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs for the father she'd lost, for the years they'd missed, for the relationship Vivian had poisoned long before literal poison entered the picture. When the tears finally stopped, she opened her laptop and began working through the backlog of decisions that needed her attention. The Meridian merger had been cancelled, Helena's analysis had been correct, and the litigation had gone against them. The Riverside property sale was being challenged in court, with Armand Corporation likely to recover the asset and the lost value. She worked until after midnight, barely noticing the passage of time. Around 1 a.m., there was a knock at the office door. Marcus stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "Hi. Security said you were still here." "Marcus." Helena gestured to a chair. "Come in." He entered slowly, looking around the office with something like grief. Feels wrong without him here. Everything feels wrong without him. They sat in silence for a moment. I'm leaving, Marcus said finally, moving to California, starting over where no one knows the Armand name. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want, but I know I don't want to be here pretending I could have been what Dad built. He looked at Helena. You were right. About everything. I wasn't strong enough to see it, but you were. You were manipulated. So were you. But you fought back. I just let it happen. You're not our enemy, Marcus. You never were. I feel like I should have been. Like I took something that was yours. Helena shook her head. Vivienne took it. You were just the tool she used. That doesn't make me feel better. Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. I wrote this. Testimony about everything I witnessed. Every conversation with Vivienne. Every decision she forced. For the trial. I wanted you to have it first in case. He trailed off. Helena took the envelope. Thank you. I also wanted to say, Dad loved you. More than he could show. More than Vivienne let him show. But I remember, before all this, when Mom was still alive, the way he looked at you, like you were this amazing person he was lucky to know. I was jealous of that even as a kid. I wish he'd been able to tell me. He did, Marcus said, just not in words. In everything he left you, in every piece of his plan to protect you. That was love, Helena. Complicated, imperfect, but real. Helena felt fresh tears threatening. Marcus stood. I should go, my flight's early tomorrow. Marcus? Helena stood too. You can call me, if you need anything, if you want to talk. You're still my brother. For the first time since all this began, Marcus smiled. You're a better person than I am. No, I just had better training in being underestimated. After he left, Helena opened the testimony. Page after page of Marcus's handwriting, documenting conversations, decisions, manipulation. It was damning evidence that would seal Vivienne's conviction. She added it to the files already prepared for the trial. Then she pulled out the letter her father had left in the storage unit and read it again, focusing on the last lines. The silence they gave you, it was never yours to carry alone. It was always the weapon that would set you free. Helena looked around the office that was now hers. The books she would read, the decisions she would make, the legacy she would carry forward. For 24 years, she'd been silent, invisible, dismissed. But in that silence, she'd learned to listen, to observe, to understand. And in the end, that silence hadn't weakened her. It had forged her into exactly who she needed to be. The daughter Richard Armand had always known she was. The leader Armand Corporation needed. The woman who proved that the quietest voices can shatter the loudest lies. Helena opened her laptop and got back to work. There was a company to rebuild, a legacy to honor, and a future to create. In silence, she had been formed. In silence, she had planned. And in the end, it was her silence that spoke loudest of all. 6 months later, Helena stood in her father's study at the estate. The study was hers now. The entire estate was hers, returned through court order after Vivienne's conviction. But Helena had kept this room exactly as Richard Armand had left it, a shrine to the man who had loved her enough to spend his dying days protecting her. On the wall behind the desk hung a frame. Inside it was her father's final letter to her, the one from the storage unit, carefully preserved under museum-quality glass. Helena read it sometimes when the weight of leadership felt too heavy, when board meetings dragged on, when difficult decisions loomed. She read it, and remembered that her father had believed in her when no one else did. The trial had lasted 4 weeks. Vivienne had been convicted on all counts: first-degree murder, fraud, forgery, conspiracy. The prosecution had presented overwhelming evidence: the toxicology reports, the forged will, the recordings, Marcus's testimony, the pattern of previous deaths. Vivienne had shown no remorse, even when sentenced to life without parole. She'd stared at Helena across the courtroom with pure hatred, as if Helena had done something wrong by refusing to disappear as planned. Gerald Hutchinson had accepted a plea deal, 15 years in exchange for full cooperation. His testimony had filled in gaps in the timeline, confirmed conspiracies, destroyed any remaining doubt. The 2 previous cases from New York and New Jersey had been reopened. Vivienne faced additional murder charges in both states. Marcus was in San Diego, working as a consultant for a small tech startup, using a different name, building a quiet life far from the Armand legacy. He and Helena spoke every few weeks, their relationship slowly healing from years of manipulation and distance. Armand Corporation had thrived under Helena's leadership. She'd restructured operations, implemented transparent practices, and refocused the company on the ethical foundations her father had valued. Stock prices had reached all-time highs. Employee satisfaction had increased. The company's reputation had transformed from scandal-plagued to respected, and Helena had done it all without raising her voice, without drama, without spectacle, just quiet, competent, devastating effectiveness. She walked to the window overlooking the estate grounds. The gardens her mother had planted were in full bloom now, maintained by Helena's orders. The fountain that had been her father's favorite place to think was running, its water catching afternoon sunlight. This was home now. Not the place where she'd been erased, but the place she'd reclaimed. Not the mansion of her silencing, but the foundation of her victory. Helena's phone buzzed. A message from Andrew Chen. Board meeting tomorrow at 9, agenda, international expansion proposal. Your vision is taking us places Richard would be proud of. She smiled. Her father had once told her that the important things were hidden, protected, found only by those who knew how to be patient and silent. He'd been preparing her for this all along, every quiet moment, every dismissed question, every time they made her invisible. It had all been training for the moment, when she would stand at the center of everything and show them what silence had taught her. Helena placed her hand on the frame holding her father's letter, a gesture she did every time she entered this room. "I did it, Dad," she whispered. "I became exactly who you knew I could be." Outside, the sun was setting over the estate, casting long shadows across the grounds. But inside in the study where Richard Armand had once planned his daughter's protection, there was only light and silence, the kind of silence that no longer meant erasure, but power.